What are some paradoxes that make your brain hurt? I was getting migraines almost every day. It would start as neck pain, travel up my neck to my head, give me a migraine only on one side, which would then make my eye hurt, and then my stomach would hurt from the head pain. I would rub the spot on my neck that hurt first over and over and over again, but nothing would help. Well, we found out the source of the pain was actually a muscle in my shoulder that was getting super tight and irritating a nerve that runs up my neck and into my head. When I would rub that tight muscle in my shoulder and get it to relax, all my pain would instantly go away, and I do mean instant. Sometimes you feel a pain in one area, but because of nerves the source is actually somewhere else. I heard this is very common with jaw and tooth pain, where the pain feels like it's in your jaw or tooth, but it's actually coming from somewhere else along the same nerves that supply your mouth. I actually recently saw a neurologist about my migraines, and she told me, along with ordering an MRI, blood work, and giving some medications, about a stretch to do when I can. Sit up straight and tilt your head to one side. Pull your opposite shoulder straight down towards the floor slowly until you feel the stretch at the base of the side of your neck. Hold for 10 seconds. Then slow tilt your head forward. You'll feel the stretch change. Hold that for 10 seconds. Repeat on the other side. I can't say it's been a direct help with my migraines, but I'd never done that stretch before, and that alone can't be good. Lol. One real-world example was SAT scores in the United States in the late 20th century. People started panicking in the early 80s because average SAT scores showed a downward trend, leading to the idea that public schools in the U.S. were failing. Turns out, if you broke down students into subgroups like race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, academic performance, etc., the average scores of each subgroup were actually improving. Average scores as a whole were getting lower because, since college was getting more accessible, more students from traditionally lower-scoring subgroups were taking the SAT. For example, students from poor households, students with mediocre grades, etc. The supposed crisis did not exist. Hospital 1 is a general hospital and Hospital 2 is a specialized cancer hospital. Both hospitals treat cancer A, which is easy to treat, and cancer B, which is hard to treat. Hospital 1 has an overall better cancer survival rate, but Hospital 2 has a better survival rate with both cancer A and cancer B. Since Hospital 2 is specialized in cancer, it gets more cancer B cases, which brings down its mixed average, even though it's better at treating both types of cancers. It's not that hard to understand, but it's really a strange thing. For those who don't know, you have a disease. 2 solutions, surgery or pills. You look a study. Pill work 80% of the time, surgery 20%. You go for the pill, but your doctor tells you the surgery will be better. He takes the study and show you. Whenever the disease is mild, patient is recommended pill. Sickness mild, it works 80% of the time. When a mild disease patient takes surgery, it works 90% of the time, but it barely happens. Whenever the disease is serious, patient is recommended surgery, but since it's serious, it works only 20% of the time. Pills have a 0% success, but since there is way more mild patients, and they always take the pill, pills get a better score than surgery, since it's only used for serious and often helpless case, despite being more effective for mild and serious. It's the breakdown of a second element. Why does A have a better score than B? It is better, or is there a third factor? Why does the dungeon's tank have a higher DPS than the DPS? Because he engages first and forbid DPS to hit for a few seconds to secure aggro. Of course he hits more, he has more time. Why do Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday cashiers check more clients? Because it's busier those days. And when you overlook some crucial data, you can end up with a paradox. The time loop is a process, call it F, which transforms the information, X, that passes through it. If X is the information at the beginning of the loop, in the past, then Fx is the state of the information at the end of the loop, in the future, after many years have passed. In other words, the process of F represents whatever happens to that information over all those years. If the time loop is self-consistent, then the information at end of the loop agrees with the information at the beginning of the loop. That is to say, fx equals x. If this constraint is true, then the only possible solution for x is a fixed point of f. There are many theorems that say that well-behaved functions must have fixed points. Link's universe appears to be no exception. The theorem therefore guarantees that there must be something that can pass through the loop which will cause itself to happen. In this case, it's the song, but maybe it could have just as easily been words, or a picture, or something else. What this all means is that the song is an emergent property of all the things that are going on, or could go on, in the universe between the two moments at either end of the time loop. The song is an eigenvector, and it encodes something fundamental about the entirety of Link's universe. That the song solves fx equals x is a truth that exists without any notion of time. There is no original cause. There is only the constraint that Link's universe makes sense. So in a certain light, it's almost logically inescapable that the forces of nature in Link's world settle on some solution to fx equals x. But what's perhaps more marvelous is that the things we observe in our universe, too, are solutions to fixed-point equations. As someone who has been on the hiring end of a lot of these decisions, I like to give this little tidbit when I see people bring this up. When a prospective employer is describing the requirements to fill an open position, don't think of that list as an absolute list of non-negotiable requirements. Think of it as a list of preferences for their ideal candidate. Ideally, everyone wants a new employee with experience. In reality, and especially nowadays with the employment market, sometimes the best applicant doesn't have much, or even any, experience. And that's okay from an employer's perspective. As long as they have an applicant that they like and think can do the job, and has the necessary licensure if needed, that's enough. So, if you see a job you want, but don't meet all the requirements, apply anyway. If you are asked about the lack of experience in a specific area in an interview, explain what you do know about it, from reading online. Explain how you are eager to learn more, and describe any tangentially related experience you might have. You will be pleasantly surprised by the opportunities this approach opens up in your job hunt. Hence the creation of a parallel universe theory. The ARG universe, timeline in which your grandfather is still alive exists, but now so does a second one, beginning from the moment where you go back in time. In one of those timelines, universes, the main of which is the one where your grandpappy is alive, with the other being a branch indirectly created by you, in which you do not exist, since your grandpappy died before having a kid. How about this? You make a time machine and go back in time to kill your grandfather, but it turns out he's armed and he kills you before you can kill him. He finds your time machine, reverse engineers it, and claims it as his own invention. So now there's no reason for present time you to invent a time machine because as far as you know, Grandpa invented it. So if you don't invent a time machine, where does Grandpa get the prototype time machine to reverse engineer and claim as his own? This is a paradox you can actually reason out. You're insulated from the backwards flow of time in a time machine, otherwise you'd go back to the moment before you turn time back, activate the machine again and effectively freeze time through a time loop. Since you're not affected by the time reversal, if you were, you'd be part of reality reversing itself and simply repeat your actions identically, culminating in you assembling a time machine and activating it, looping time again. You could kill your grandfather and you wouldn't be affected. The answer is, why do you need to know? If it's for forensic reasons, then the ship made out of the replaced parts isn't the ship you need. You need the original parts to conduct whatever experiment or research you need to forensically assess. Maybe to look for DNA in a murder case something. If it's for legal reasons, then it will be whatever the ship's log says. Was this ship at this location on this date? Doesn't matter about the parts, just what the log registers as whatever identifies as that ship and where it says it was, etc. It's not really a paradox per se and not one to get in a twist about. It's a thought experiment there to draw out instinctive reactions to questions that you can then apply to more complicated real-life scenarios. Is a person the same person at age 10 as age 50? Forensically, Probably not. All of the cells will have been replaced. They've grown. They will have new features, maybe even missing a limb, etc. Legally, they are the same person. They have a record that follows them and that identifies them for who they are. Now the really interesting questions come when you start asking forensically if you at 10 are the same at 50. If so much about you has changed, can you be considered the same person? Is it morally permissible to charge you with a crime you committed at one stage in your life if you as a person has changed so dramatically, you wouldn't even recognize the person who committed the crime all those years ago? What if you don't even remember committing the crime? That's why that question, and thought experiments like it, exist to be the launching off point for more interesting and important discussions. The answer is that it's up to you, because it's just a label, not anything inherent with the boat, which is what the paradox is pointing out. That is, my boat is breaking, so I slowly replace my boat with different parts. It's still my boat because I label it as such. I then get tired of replacing it, burn it down, and buy a new boat. That boat is now my boat, because I said it is. The full version. You have a ship. Over time, some of the parts become old and weak, so you tear them off and replace them with brand new ones. You throw the old parts in a warehouse and leave them. Many years go by, and eventually you've replaced every single part on the entire ship. So you go into the warehouse, shine up the old pieces, and put them back together to create the ship again. At that point, which ship is the original ship? I don't know if this is a paradox, so forgive me if not. Studies have shown brain activity up to 10 minutes before a person decides to do something. As in, they have a person hooked up and are recording his brain patterns. They see activity in a certain part of the brain associated with actions, and 10 minutes later, the person picks up a glass of water. This is part of Sam Harris's thesis on why we don't actually have free will. We aren't even aware of how our decision-making process works. And the part that leaves my brain struggling is, if I'm not in my driver's seat, who the hell is? Could this be a signal from the digestive system that the person is thirsty? Or is it activity in the part of the brain associated with arm movement? Also, even if you can predict exactly what someone's gonna do in 10 minutes, that doesn't really show a lack of free will. If you look for signals 11 minutes prior, you wouldn't see anything, assumedly. So the person is still being controlled by their own brain, which is still kind of the definition of free will. I noticed this while dreaming. I'm having a great dream, then midway through, I dream of going to the toilet for a pee, but when there I can't stop peeing. I'm just peeing and peeing and peeing. At this point I, thankfully, wake up suddenly realizing that I'm about to wet the bed. I'm seconds away from disaster. What in effect is happening is part of my brain, which I have no conscious control over, is creating a fantasy dream world for me. Another part of my brain, which again I have absolutely no conscious control over, is monitoring my body and, recognizing that my bladder is full to overflowing, decides my conscious self needs to wake up and waddle to the toilet. Instead of simply waking me, it manipulates my dream into warning me of the potential looming flood. Who is doing all this? It's not me, as in my conscious self. So who is it, and how much other control does it have over my actions and decisions? Is it only doing this while I'm asleep, or does it also manipulate my conscious thoughts to make me make what it considers is the correct course of action? My most memorable example was a dream I had years ago. I was on a steamboat traveling down the Mississippi River. I'm not American BTW, so I've no idea why I was having this dream. Along the way I saw an island in the middle of the river. It piqued my curiosity, so I stole one of the lifeboats and rowed my way over to it. It was a small swampy island surrounded by flotsam, mostly rotting old logs and branches. I clambered over them and found it completely empty except for a public toilet made of bricks in the middle of the island. I went in there, and the inevitable happened. I started peeing, and then suddenly woke with the desperate need to pee. Why does my brain have to go to such convoluted lengths in order to wake me? This happened to me in a way that I was aware of it. I started getting gradually stressed at work, and after about 5 years or so, that started to turn into anxiety. One day, out of the blue, I thought how annoying it would be if I developed something like a tic. I casually jerked my head to the side, again remarking how annoying it would be if I started to do that involuntarily. Well, about a year later, the stress got so bad that that very tic came along and hasn't gone away, despite me leaving the stressful environment. Rather than respond to everyone individually, I'm going to post a few links. One big reason is that I am no expert in the subject, and it would be better if you read the source material than my own mangled attempts to translate. https://samharris.org/the illusion of free will/ That is a link where Sam provides a synopsis of his views on free will. https://qz.com/156915e/neuroscientists read unconscious brain activity to predict decisions /m/. And here is a brief account of the research showing the brain shows activity long before the decision is made. To the commenter who said minutes were too long, you were correct. It was seconds rather than minutes, which is still absurdly long, but yeah, minutes would be ridiculous. The grandfather paradox is for sure the one that makes mine hurt the most. Since you killed your grandfather, one of your parents aren't born, so you're not born, but since you're not born, you never travel back in time to kill your grandfather, so you'll exist. However, since you were born, you have the ability to go back in time and kill your grandfather. It's a never-ending loop. It could, however, possibly be explained due to the idea of parallel timelines and universes where it branches off from the original timeline. Universe. The fucking double-slit experiment, it might be called something different now. The experience shows electrons, I think, act differently when observed or not, but the part that got me was even if the particles were recorded, they knew and acted like they were being observed by humans. It breaks my brain to think about it. It makes me angry and paranoid at the same time, but I love it. It's so strange. I blame my dad. He showed me a video explaining the experimenter and it stuck with me most of my life. You get relatable experience. I got into a job surveying because I knew how GPS and navigation systems function. My airport job I got because I have a pilot's license, so I know the industry. I worked at DIA because I drove de-icing trucks and knew how airports functioned. The liquor store one and grocery store beer section attendant was due to me being a drunk who could keep a conversation. Being able to relate your experience to the job is what they're looking for. So first of all, there is a difference between checking your credit score and getting your credit report. You can check your credit score pretty much anytime you want without impacting your score through a credit monitoring service such as Credit Karma. Obtaining your credit history is seen as essentially the same thing as applying for credit by the credit reporting agencies, in part because one typically does that when considering obtaining new credit. This is because it is counted as an inquiry, and each inquiry is tracked and exceeding a certain number, which I think is 3, over a certain period of time looks unfavorably because it looks poor to lenders because of risk perceived. Your credit score doesn't necessarily go down when you pay off a credit card. Your score will go down, however, when you close an open line of credit such as a credit card. The score isn't at all arbitrary. It's a blend of multiple factors with varying weighting on those factors, such as debt-to-income ratio, which is factored by adding all your monthly payments and dividing it by your monthly income before taxes. The payments considered are rent, mortgage, car loan, student loans, A2R and personal credit cards, and lines of credit. So if all those add up to $2,500 and you make $5,000 a month, your debt-to-income ratio would be 50%, which is bad and will cause your credit score to go down, as well as prevents you from obtaining any new lines of credit because you are overextended. Additionally, having a high utilization of your open lines of unsecured credit card balances, causes your score to go down. Having a balance of $2,000 on a card with a total line of credit of $5,000 is a 40% utilization, which is not good. It's also worth mentioning that this same factor applies to all your unsecured credit card balances, so if you have 3 cards with a combined total line of credit of $10,000, and combined you have a utilized amount of $4,000. It's not good for your credit score. Also worth mentioning that age of credit matters as well. This is calculated by adding the number of months on your open accounts together, then dividing that number by the number of accounts to get the average. This is why adding a new line of credit lowers your score, because it decreases the average age because of one additional account contributing 0 months of age to the math. The paradox to me when it comes to credit is how it is that exactly zero of this shit is taught at any point in any formal education level, given how critical your credit score and history is in nearly all aspects of life, including some career aspects. I had to learn all this shit on my own in my 30s, and I'm glad I did. Doctor, pay your bills on time every time, pay your credit cards off every month, and don't apply for new lines of credit more than once or twice a year at most. Do all that and you'll have a great credit score. As someone with schizophrenia, I can say people who aren't psychotic sometimes take their solid perception of reality for granted. I sometimes wonder if I simply know more than I am supposed and am thus seen as crazy. But we are to some degree aware that there are things in the universe that our senses just can't pick up, like how many spectrums of light we know about, but just cannot imagine. I'm tied between pondering about the theories of great minds on the way the universe works, and wondering if I'm just delusional again. I'm probably delusional again, but I also have a feeling I'm right about some things that most people just cannot see or want to think about. Reality is much thinner than their own perception allows them to believe. Let's say I invent a silicon circuit that perfectly models a neuron. If I replaced each and every neuron in your brain with the silicon one at a time in such a way that you never lost consciousness, did I kill you? When is what is left of you thinking and feeling and experiencing the world? Or are you a robot? If you're a robot, when did that happen? We know from medical record that people can still function with large portions of their brain missing, so clearly I didn't kill you with the first neuron. Not only that, but the other neurons were basically unaware some neurons went missing since they're still talking to perfect replicas. But if you're not a robot, then how are you still here when your brain is completely destroyed? Are you just the program your brain is running, no matter the hardware? The sphere within which we might detect another civilization has a radius of only a few light years, and includes just a handful of stars which are all unlikely to harbor life. As if that weren't enough, out of the 4 billion years of life on Earth we've only had radio for about a century. That is a very tiny window for searching for other civilizations. The Milky Way is one of trillions of galaxies. It is about 100,000 light years in diameter, and up to 2,000 light-years thick. It contains between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. There could be a million advanced civilizations at any given moment just in our galaxy, and none would be close enough to another to detect each other. A more advanced civilization could broadcast across the galaxy for 1,000,000 years and never overlap in time with a civilization capable of detecting and decoding that signal. The answer to Fermi's paradox is simple. The scale of time and space is too great. Even a universe bursting with advanced technological civilizations would see few interactions. Nearly every civilization will spend its entire existence alone.